Hello, my name is Sheena with Rise Wellness, and this is Activate Your Genius. Thank you so much for joining me today as I am exploring the 33rd Gene Key from Richard Rudd's book, The Gene Keys. This is the shadow of forgetting. This is the gift of mindfulness, and this is the Siddhi, or the highest destiny path of revelation. So if you checked out my other video last week, it was Gene Key 19th, and this was the programming partner to this gene. So whether you check it out before this video, after this video, I do invite you to check that video out at some point during your contemplation. The programming partners are always the balancing act to these genes. You get a really full idea of how they work together and complement each other. So if you did check out my video last week, the shadow of Gene Key 19th is the shadow of codependence. So what we talked about was that back in ancient times, we relied on nature, as we still do, for our sustenance, for our survival. But in ancient times, we anthropomorphized it, which is really just a big fancy word to say we worshipped nature. We actually created deities out of this nature for keeping us alive. And therefore, it was in the shadow of codependence that all of our religions, our organized religions, were born. We handed our power away to nature. We handed our power away to these gods, these deities, because eventually a lot of these stories got so lost in translation that we started worshiping these figures, and we forgot that our higher power lies within us. So with the shadow of forgetting, we are reminded, or we are invited to contemplate the origins of these stories, how these translations got lost along the way, and we're reminded to tap back in to our true divinity, our true sovereignty. Our higher power lies within us. So every time a human being incarnates, it brings memories with them. In ancient times, in the Indian philosophy, we would call these samskaras. Samskaras are actually like the cellular memory that gets stored along each incarnation. There's actually now science and research that will boast to this concept. We've got more research around it, but basically there's two big concepts that have been really misconstrued along the way in religion, and that is karma and incarnation or reincarnation. And these are two themes that we see with this Gene Key 33. So this idea around samskara, these, like I said, these are the memories that are stored in our cells that carry from lifetime to lifetime. So they're basically charges of energy that are stored in our consciousness. So I don't know if you've ever had the experience or met someone that is deathly afraid of water, but they've never ever had any instances in their life to explain why. Well, there's a high likelihood that in a past incarnation, they may have experienced trauma around water that they have therefore carried into this lifetime. So they don't have a conscious memory of drowning per se, but they have carried that fear along with them. I know, and I've mentioned, I went to a palm reader a few weeks ago, and she said to me in a past life that I drowned. While of course I have no way to validate that, I will tell you that I have an uneasiness around the ocean, we'll say. I'll always get in it, but when I get in it, I'm literally consciously aware of the samskara behind it, and I'm trying to heal those ancestral wounds. So the 33rd shadow is part of the ring of trials, along with Gene Key 12 and 56. And basically what these are the three stop codons in our genome. They're the terminators. So much like a period at the end of a sentence, these stop codons are so important in our DNA because they help us interpret the language. So it's not just like a big old run-on sentence. So this 33rd gene is one of those stop codons. So I love how the genes are always so full of paradox. I mean, because life is so full of paradox, right? So The 33rd gene is smack dab in the middle of the gene keys. We've got 64 DNA traits, and this is the codon ring of stop, of the termination, of the end. And there it is, right smack in the middle instead of at the end of the gene keys. But this gene is all about processing our karmas, our incarnation, our ancestral wounds. This gene is about remembering who we are, tapping inward so we can heal all of those samskaras and eventually pass through and return to source. At some point, as we've talked about, if you've seen my other gene key videos, we will lose our physical form. This revelation, the highest destiny path of this gene, will be the end. This will be after we've passed. We won't even see this Siddhi come to fruition. So the biggest theme along this passage is our karma and these samskaras, these traumas that keep getting incarnated through with us. So one quote that I learned years ago that I've always held on to from the wellness community is, if it's hysterical, it's historical. So this gene really invites you to look at the people in your life that really trigger you. This might be a boss, this might be a partner, this might be a parent. Who are the people that have this really prevalent charge that really activates you? This is the nectar. This is where your work is. These are like the karmic wormholes. If you are able to maintain a relationship with these people, get to the root of where you're suffering and how it's being projected through your relationship or through the behaviors of this person, you essentially are healing those samskaras. These people have incarnated and come back into this lifetime that you're in now to heal something that might not even be part of your human life. It might be from something, 22 lifetimes ago. We don't know. So it's really funny how in our language, we would say we have these ancestral wounds. Well, the gene key would look at this word more like a wound, like we are wound around. These wounds are binding us. They're actually winding around our cells. So this whole process, this passage from shadow to gift state, is unwinding that. It's tapping into the traumas in these relationships. It's healing these wounds, because these are literally the greatest opportunities for you in this lifetime, and that's why you've been presented with these options. We are spiritual beings having a human existence. Everything that comes to us is a lesson. These lessons in our human existence are usually coming to us in the form of relationships, how we relate to others. So whether we call that a blessing or a curse is totally up to you. I think it's pretty fascinating. So the difficult relationships in your life are going to be the most direct route to question yourself. And as far as these karmic relationships go, these might be the people that you have felt really familiar with since you first met them. They might also have the same experience with you. They might actually have that awareness that there's some karmic energy stored here. We've got some things to work on. So you usually will have an immediate familiarity with these people. Now, I'll be honest with you, karmic relationships are not easy. I could even go as far as defining them as love-hate relationships. There's usually a lot of toxicity among them because you have lifetimes of wounds that are now being presented to you for healing. So, a karmic relationship, when you actually cleanse this, could be a soul connection that goes on to be the super healthy, amazing relationship, or it may not. So despite many popular beliefs, the specific karma that you carry in your physical body, it doesn't have any direction, or it doesn't have any connection to your past lives. Your samskaras are part of a collective energy field that's cleansed and reset every single time that you take an incarnation. So as we know, if you've watched any of my other videos, or if you've done any exploration on shadow work yourself, we are constantly projecting out into the world the things that we need to heal from. So this journey is, like all of them, an inward journey to really see how we can effectively heal those samskaras so that they're no longer being projected out onto these karmic relationships. So, as I mentioned, these karmic relationships, they are usually very intense. They can be very challenging. And when you, or if you decide to enter them deeply and stay committed to the process, not only are you gracefully transforming the codependent nature of these relationships, you are bringing them into a higher frequency. The higher frequency of codependency is sensitivity. And in this gene, the gene key 33, the higher frequency is mindfulness. So these programming partners you see, I forgot this love that I have for myself. I forgot the power that's in me. I handed it over to somebody else. I became codependent that someone else was going to fill my cup. And this becomes the low vibration biofeedback loop of these two genes. In an elevated state, this becomes, I add more mindfulness to my thoughts, actions, and behaviors. When I say something that's maybe an old limiting belief and I project it out into this argument that I'm having, for example, that other person might become really sensitive. They might, you might become aware right in the middle of this debate or argument that, you know what? I'm doing that thing that I used to do. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I am having that forgetfulness, that I have this suffering around my self-love, my lack of self-love. So I'm looking for you to fill my cup instead of filling my own cup. I'm projecting these things onto you. So from an elevated frequency, you start to become more aware when you're self-sabotaging. So this, I got this little, me and technology, it's like, okay, I'm trying, but I got this little, what's this, presenter slider thing, and I'm having a lot of hard times using it. So, okay, so as far as our forgetfulness goes, everything serves a purpose. So we can never look at our shadow like it's these horrible negative things. They all have a reason. So we would drive ourselves like absolutely loopy if we knew that we were incarnated like a million times over. So we forget that we have continued to take physical form and physical form. Therefore, we forget our true essence, our true identity. We wouldn't keep making the same mistake over and over again if we were aware of all of this. So this forgetfulness serves as an instrumental part of our growth in order to eventually transmutate and heal from. So once you start adding this new consciousness, you're able to better look at your patterns, especially in your relationships and also your relationship to suffering. And it begins to change. You begin to look at things as teaching opportunities instead of, oh my gosh, why me, poor me, falling into this victim mentality. If someone's challenging the F out of you, what is that? What are you challenged by? What are they bringing to the table that's unhealed within you? This is an opportunity. It doesn't have to be this painful struggle. There's so much nectar in there. So On a low vibration, we always have an inward projection of the shadow frequency and an external projection of the shadow frequency. The internal, or as we call it in the gene keys, recessive nature, these are the people that are reserved. They are extremely hidden. They are very closed off from the world. They have a hard time communicating with others. And quite frankly, and I hate even saying this, but they might actually get forgotten. You know, these people don't form relationships because at some point in a relationship, you have to be intimate. You have to break down your barriers in order to build a relationship with somebody else. And these people are not willing to do that. They will dive headfirst into their work or lifestyle choices. Maybe they make some lifestyle choices that get them incarcerated for their entire life, and they're just cut off from family, from friends, from life. So that is, these are the reserved people. Now, unfortunately, if they don't awake, like I said, they can be forgotten. Fortunately, if they do awaken, these people usually surprise the hell out of you. You know, they usually have so much wisdom that they have absorbed over the course of their lifetime. And, you know, as soon as they start speaking to you, you're like, whoa, where did that come from? And this makes me think of Albert Einstein for some reason, because he was a late talker. He actually didn't learn how to form complete sentences until he was about 5 years old. So it's so funny. Like, I wonder when he was 5 years old and started talking, his parents must have been like, what in the world? And, you know, here he became this genius, which we'll talk more about as well. But, so yeah, these people might not say anything. They might feel really disconnected from everyone, but eventually, hopefully, in this incarnation, they do wake up. They do communicate. They do let themselves out of the prison that they've built around themselves, and they're quite wise. You know, you've got these people, going back to the idea of being locked up. You know, there are some people that have spent, you know, lifetimes in prison, and they get out and they write these books that are unbelievably full of wisdom. Maybe they've just been secluded in their cell reading and reading and reading and writing. But yeah, once they re-emerge into society, they've got so much important information to share. So the reactive side. You've got the inward expression and you've got the reactive side. Usually these are more extroverted people. These are the censorious people. These are the button pushers. So as I said, on these low frequencies, we forget, right? These button pushers, they remember. They don't remember. They are unaware of their own patterns. These patterns, this button pushing is unconscious behavior on their part, but they remember all of your buttons and they know exactly which buttons to push to get a rise out of you. A lot of times with these reactive natures, it's repressed anger that's coming out. So this one's no exception. So they're pushing your button, they're trying to get a rise out of you because this is a pattern, a development that they have around how I get love from others. I push their buttons. It gives me attention. It makes you notice me. So the other people are forgotten. You are not going to forget these people. These are people who are going to stick with you. And it might be in really negative ways. It usually is until these people become conscious of these behaviors. So yeah, they usually will get their desired reaction. They'll piss you off. And at some point when they do awaken and they do become aware of these tendencies, and maybe this is you who's watching this right now, you can see, oh yeah, I do tend to talk about this subject that I know is really delicate, or this over here, which is super sensitive to this person. You know, and this awareness might stop you from having that habit once you realize there's much better ways to get people's attention and to love and be loved in return. So the 33rd gift, this is the gift of mindfulness. So mindfulness is a word that we hear in Buddhism a lot, where it's understood as one of the attributes that you get out of meditation, right? So to be mindful means to be attentive. These people are aware of their thoughts, actions, and behaviors. So someone who has raised their 33rd frequency to the gift state is someone who is no longer a victim of their unconscious desires and thoughts. They add this awareness that they operate from a deeper place of understanding. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, like, oh, this is me doing that thing again. So I'll give you a personal example. For me, when I first started digging into my shadows, I kept coming right back around to feelings around not feeling worthy of love and connection. And even though this was just this limiting belief that I had spiraling around for years and years and years, I noticed that whichever shadow I was going in, this limiting belief would creep back in, and I would start to become more aware of it. Oh shit, this is that thing where I don't feel worthy of love and belonging and connection. Okay, I see it coming back in again. And I had to keep retraining it every time it would come up. And now, I'll say affirmations like, I am worthy of love and belonging simply because I'm alive, and love and belonging is my birthright. So you start to take those limiting beliefs and become more aware of them, see when they're circling back around, and adding a different script to it that makes more sense to you. That's actually something that you can, that serves you, that's actually one that affirms you. So through mindfulness, you purify your nature. So you're no longer creating this negative karma. So as I said, this process is many times done through relationships. It's actually accelerated when it's done through relationship, because there's so much power in having all these limiting beliefs being projected out. So you become so much more aware of your behaviors in your dynamic connecting with others. So you can see which patterns are trapping you and which ones are setting you free. You get drawn into more experiences that enrich you, that breathe more life into you, that feel more expansive and feel more free. And the karma in your DNA is actually purified back into pure essence. So you find yourself wanting more of this, wanting more of these people around you that are on the same vibration as you, that are bringing out this natural essence in you. One relationship quote that I love so much is, your relationships should make you more of who you are and not less. You want people that bring the authenticity out of you, instead of the people that are toxic, that keep you on this low vibration of believing that, while mine was around self-worth. I use that as an example because I'm a holistic wellness coach. I hear it all the time. I see this in the behavior of others. My shadow of my feelings of worthlessness are not just for me. This is something that a lot of people struggle with. I mean, look, Brene Brown is making a career out of just those simple concepts around love and belonging. So meditation and contemplation, these are two really amazing practices for tapping into your mindfulness. But mindfulness, once you start incorporating these different things into your life, isn't really a practice as much as it's a way of living. You just add mindfulness to everything that you do, whether you just create a ritual out of drinking your cup of cacao in the morning, or it's saying your prayers before bed, or whatever it is. You just add this mindfulness and enter so physically into everything that you're doing. You enter mentally and physically into whatever you're doing. You are really present. So mindfulness really is an organic flowering of this self-awareness and self-remembering. So next time you catch yourself in a heated argument and you realize that you're not acting out of your true nature, I invite you to stop yourself right in the middle of it and say, hold up, I am so sorry. I am totally projecting my inadequacies on you. I am feeling really insecure right now, and I am making myself really hard to love. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'm working on this. I'm going to call myself out right now. I need to take a pause and just apologize for my behavior right now. So Richard Rudd writes this amazing quote, which is pretty long, so I'm just going to read it. It's about this gift. And he says, interestingly enough, mindfulness is the prerequisite for genius. The gift level is the level of your genius. When you can objectively view your thoughts, your feelings, your passions and desires, your own subjectivity, only then can you create art from them. If you are a scientific genius, you need to be able to think with your feelings or feel with your thoughts. This is how genius emerges into the world. It's witnessed. This is why many geniuses are uninterested in their recognition. They know that they did not create their genius. It only appeared when they're not there. Genius is a state of consciousness, a certain stage in the raising of your frequency. True mindfulness occurs when you become aware that something else is beginning to look through your eyes, think through your mind, and live through your actions. This something else, whether we call it genius, meditation, or prayer, is the larger reality remembering itself through us. I could nerd out on this stuff all day. I mean, I do, so yeah. But I think that's so cool, right? So I named this series Activate Your Genius because you are a genius. We just are doing these contemplative exercises to raise your consciousness. Raise your frequency so you become aware of where your victim is hiding every single week, thinking about it, seeing how it shows up in your relationships, in your work, in your life, and adding more mindfulness to it. Noticing when it comes in, changing the behavior, stopping it right in the middle of a heated argument, like I said, is saying, hold up, I'm doing that thing again. I'm sorry about that. So my favorite Albert Einstein quote, which I actually have on a sweater, it says, I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious. And I love that. I love that. It's because when we add this playful curiosity to life, that's how we tap into the fact that we have these special talents. Maybe we are an amazing painter or a sculptor or actor or writer or so on and so forth. But at some point we had to get curious and playful enough to experiment with these things. So if you've never read the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, stop everything you're doing and buy that book. If shadow work and the introspection behind your ego is something that's important for you, you have to read this book. I might even start a book club on it at some point. It also has an oracle deck that goes along with it if you choose, but it's amazing. It's amazing language at understanding your ego and the way that you operate out of your unconscious, and redirecting that, adding this mindfulness, adding this awareness to it. So when those old limiting beliefs creep in, you can see them. When these old patterns start running, become aware of them. And I read a lot, but I just can't say enough of good things about the way that he brings language to these things, that prior to reading that book, I'm like, is it just me? I think it's just me. It's just me, right? And I read that book and was like, holy shit, this is a bestseller. This has sold millions of copies. It's not just me. This is a thing. And now I have language behind it, which if you know me, that's one of my favorite things is understanding things in a new way. And, you know, so many people have already put the information out there. It's about finding it. So definitely want to share that resource. The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. So amazing about understanding your ego and your true self. So through this, I'm sorry, I'm just the worst. So through this mindfulness, this is what Richard Rudd calls the death of the ego, which if you watch some of my very early videos in regards to this, that was my first entryway into shadow work, was saying, I've heard that I have to have this death of the ego. How do I kill this thing off? And if you want to know the one word answer to killing off your ego, it's mindfulness. Mindfulness translates to consciousness. Your ego is unconsciousness. Therefore, consciousness and unconsciousness cannot coexist. Once you add consciousness to your ego, you illuminate it. You turn the light switch on, and the shadow doesn't exist anymore. So now we bring the frequency up a little bit higher to the highest destiny path. This is the 33rd Siddhi of revelation. So in a Siddhic state, your mind can no longer interfere with the purity of consciousness, which flushes now the samskaras from your whole being. You have no connection to the past. You have no connection to the future. Time itself dissolves. So mythology refers to the revelation as a flood. And it says that one day we're going to be washed clean by this overwhelming tsunami of consciousness, and our existence as a separate creature will simply come to an end. So revelation actually brings an end to endings. It brings an end to humanity. It brings an end to evolution. It's the final chapter. Eventually the universe itself is going to disappear. And part of our forgetting is because we can't even grasp all the concepts of what this looks like. We don't even know what comes after. But at some point, we won't be here. We'll stop incarnating into a physical body. We'll stop having all the lessons. This is the codon ring of trials. So eventually, our suffering will end. We'll have no more trials to learn from. We'll go even beyond consciousness. So this flash flood wipes out our past and reveals the mystery of the eternal now. So although we talk about evolution coming to an end, there are these kingdoms that exist beyond our present concept of evolution. This 33rd Siddhi is an access portal to other realities, things that we can't even conceive at this point. Enlightenment itself evolves. So this Siddhi accelerates the evolution of our consciousness. We start to go beyond the binary codes of the DNA into what we call our subtle bodies. So this 33rd Siddhi invites us to fall so in love with our story. We are, like I said, we're spiritual beings, have a human existence. We are here to get all the lessons, but this is our playground. We're here to play. We're here to have fun. It doesn't have to be so serious. We hear it in songs and stories and movies all the time that enjoy the journey, enjoy the dance, enjoy this life. Stop making it so serious and complicated. Stop falling victim to everything. Life is happening for us. It's expanding our awareness. It's elevating our consciousness. It's raising our frequency. So at some point, we'll stop having the trials. The codon ring of trials will come to an end. Our suffering will come to an end. So have fun. Your story is unique. The way that one person reached enlightenment may not be yours, and that's okay. And your truth might be different from someone else's, and that's okay. Have fun with your story. We are creators. We are gardeners. We are here to cultivate this enriching experience. So make your story one worth writing, one worth living, one worth celebrating. This highest destiny path is really about just living with so much intention, having fun, seeing the way that the unhealed parts of you are being projected out into the ethers for you to acknowledge, for you to become mindful about, and for you to heal. These samskaras are being flushed clean. We talked about in the 55th gene the vaporization of the victim. A lot of times when we think about these parables in the Bible, we don't look under the subcontext to see what they really mean. So in the Revelations in the Bible, which is the end of times, we hear about this great flood. Well, if there's a theme that you may have noticed in a lot of these higher frequencies, it's this purification. It's this detoxification that we go through. And guess what? It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. These things need to be released from us to go back and purify the earth. We bring all this salt out into the universe for this detoxification and purification. So let the tears come, let them fall. Build up sweat at the gym and let the sweat out. Let the salt out of your body. It's part of the purification process. Be so aware of your thoughts and actions that you make your intention to operate from your highest self in everything that you do. Make every situation better than when you left it. That's what we're here to do. So this past couple of weeks, I have been so curious about revisiting the Bible. I grew up Catholic, even though it wasn't always practicing Catholic. I did go through baptism and first communion and confirmation, and we would go to the church on Easter and that kind of thing. And I knew that Jesus died on the cross at age 33. This is June 33. So I had to re-examine the revelations, this great flood, this dying on the cross, this anthropomorphisy, that's not a word, but this idea from the last week's Gene of 19 of worshiping nature, the way that we created these deities out of nature. We anthropomorphized it. So now, if I take a look at that aspect and I revisit the parables of the Bible, I go on to say, Jesus, the Son of Man, dies on a cross in the middle of December. Okay. Let's figure that out. Let's take that a step deeper. So, sun, we worship the sun. Jesus dies on a cross. What we actually can take from that, if we want to look at through a depth psychology lens to this story, the winter solstice. This sun dies on the cross in the middle of December, December 21st. We have our winter equinox. The sun goes down into the southern hemisphere. We go through 3 days of the longest nights, the minimal sunlight, the less time of sunlight in the day. This is Jesus dying on the cross. The constellation that Jesus, the sun, dies on is in a cross formation. The cross symbolism that we see in Christianity has been used for 5,000 years, which is well before the life of Jesus. So the sun dies on this cross, this galaxy of stars, and re-emerges 3 days later. The winter equinox, we've got the winter solstice happens in December 21st, around December 21st. And then when the sun starts moving back into the northern hemisphere, it goes 1 degree north, it starts the transit back, and the sun rises again. The Son of Man, Jesus, rises on the cross again. We see him again. The light starts coming out. We then celebrate this resurrection as spring, as Easter. what this resurrection is, or in Judaism, this Passover, is this sun passing over the equator on its way back into the northern hemisphere. So the truth is always out there, but you have to be discerning about where you're getting it from. I know there's a lot of things that I say in these videos that there are going to be people out there that say, that just ain't true. And that's okay. I'm sharing what is true for me in the hopes that it resonates with somebody out there. Because at the very least, it adds more awareness to maybe a concept that you hadn't thought about before. The reason that I believe it's important to bring it up is because in my life, I handed my power over to this external figure, this God, and believed that there was another force that could either bless me or damn me depending on my behavior. When I took my power back and I realized there is still a higher power that I consider in my life, there is a master creator, this source larger than I, bigger than I, that I can aspire to, so I can still have what people that go to church have, is handing my power over to something greater than I. However, I'm not handing it all over. Been there, done that. I'm not doing that anymore. And so with this idea of Jesus as the sun, this is the sun worship, we can see how the Bible lost in the translation some of the nectar of these stories. So now when we look at the winter equinox, I invite you to consider what we call the birth of Jesus, the Christmas Day, is really the sun's birthday. Instead of the Son of Man, we have this worship of sun in so many contexts when you look at Christianity especially. And I'm just centering around that one because that's one I'm more familiar with. But you could also look at Passover, passing over the equator. But this Easter is this springing back to life. When the sun comes back, we have all this life, all of this rebirth. So it's just a concept that I invite you to consider. Even when you think about church, our worship is on Sunday, the day of the sun. When you go to church, you receive a communion. This circle round disc, is a symbolism of the sun. When you see around Jesus's head, you've got these rays of sunshine. You see so much of it in Christian art. You see when you go to church, you're asked constantly to rise. This is all part of this sun worship. So activating your genius, because now you know, if you didn't already before, that you have all of this genius within you. This passage specifically is about remembering your genius. It's about tapping into your true essence. When you were a kid, what did you have the most fun doing? Was it painting? Was it playing dress up with your friends? Was it sitting on a picnic blanket and looking at the clouds and envisioning them as animals and shapes? What was it? Can you take the time this week to explore what your true essence is, the things that you've forgotten along the way? The I Ching hexagram name for this gene is retreat. So one of the things Richard Rudd talks about with this gene is this invitation to retreat actively. Sometimes we think about retreat as a withdrawal, but we invite you this week to actively retreat into whatever it is you're doing. Savor every sip of this cup of tea that you're drinking. Create rituals out of the seemingly mundane. This could be so many things. It's just really retreating into the sweetness of whatever it is you're doing. Instead of this week sipping your coffee while you're going through your social media feed? What if you sip your coffee outside and you just observe the nature outside your window? What if instead of, I can't even talk. What if, and I'm dating myself when I say this, but if things are getting kind of bland with your partner that you live with, what about making a fun date night out of grocery shopping? Split up the shopping list and supermarket sweep that shit. Who can get to the checkout line the fastest? I do weird things. But like, how can you just make ordinary things really fun? I remember hearing this story that I thought was so touching, and it was this man that was recollecting his favorite childhood memory, and his favorite memory was movie night at home. His dad would make these little tickets, and he would be the ticket checker, and he would cut the tickets when they got in. His mother would operate the concession stand, and she would have popcorn as they were getting into their seats for the movie. And he grew up with this as his favorite childhood memory, like the sweetness of movie nights at home. Later, he became an adult and learned that his family was poor. He had no idea they were poor. He had no idea that his family would never be able to afford to take them to the movies. So what they did was they made movie night at home really special. They created this kind of ceremony, this ritual around movie night that made it an impression. Anytime that you talk to kids and you ask them their favorite part of Christmas, it's not the big fancy video game they got. It's not the whatever toy. It's the spending time. It's the making the gingerbread cookies. It's the bedtime stories. So this passage really just invites you to think about the special moments that you've had in your life. Sometimes we rush through life so fast that we forget to stop. That's what the forgetfulness, it's forgetting about how far you've come. Maybe you're months into your shadow work journey, your healing journey, your whatever that looks like for you. Maybe you were sick last year or the couple years before and you're still getting back to baseline. This is the time to stop and think about how far you've come. This is the time to savor all of the sweet moments. This is the time to make a ritual out of the ordinary. It doesn't have to be a big sacred ceremony, but it's just relishing the sweet moments. It's remembering them. Maybe you write your gratitude at the beginning of the day, or maybe it's right before your head hits the pillow. You can spend a little extra time this week thinking about, oh man, today was so nice. The weather was so beautiful. I loved being outside in it. Or, oh my gosh, it was so nice connecting with that friend that I hadn't talked to in a while. Or, oh my gosh, that was so sweet when the little bunny rabbit hopped on my trail during my walk. It's just thinking about all of those sweet moments that you had in the day and relishing them. So activating your genius this week is really just being so fully present in each of your moments. It's adding awareness to your thoughts and behaviors. And if an old limiting belief creeps back in, whether it's by yourself or it's in an exchange with another, it's being aware of it. It's calling yourself out if you need to. If you catch yourself operating from your old patterns, admit to it. There's no shame. We're all human. This is part of the lesson. And if you are in a karmic relationship with someone and you take that act of calling yourself out for it, that other person is trying to heal their samskaras too. They need to hear that also. It's just as important for you to call yourself out as it is for them to hear you call yourself out. It strengthens the relationship. It adds this new level of awareness that raises the vibration of it. And, this is what I want you to do this week, is Take extra time to sip your tea. Move through life slower. Be more present in all of your exchanges with everyone, with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. In the comment section, I am going to put some questions in there. If you are doing some contemplation on your relationships and potentially these karmic relationships, I'm going to put some questions in there if you find yourself getting triggered, and I invite you to explore them. As I said before, if it's hysterical, it's historical. And it might come from incarnations, you might never be able to land on it. But it also might come from a previous relationship that's been triggered, or a moment in your childhood that you didn't heal from. So I'm going to offer you a little bit more introspection this week in terms of some questions to contemplate. And I'll put that in the comment section instead of putting them here. Instead of all the questions here, this week I invite you to just really be present, be mindful. The truth will reveal itself. The Gene Keys for me is all about remembering. You know, as I've mentioned before, I share the same primary gift of truth with the author, Richard Rudd. So this information, as I read it, feels so much more about activating these old memories more than it is about learning these new concepts. And that might just be my experience, or maybe you have that as well. I would love to hear about it. If you liked this video, please give it a like, give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend, maybe a karmic relationship, maybe not. But I would love to hear from you. You can follow me on Instagram at Rise Wellness Coaching. You can check out my other videos. I especially invite you to check out the programming partner, which is the Gene Key number 19th. This is the shadow of codependence. This is the gift of sensitivity. I invite you to see the parallels between these two things. The ultimate Siddhic state of this programming partner is sacrifice. At some point, we have to sacrifice who we thought we were going to be, or who we thought these other people were going to be, or these karmic relationships that aren't serving us and are simply toxic because you or the other person doesn't want to do the work. At some point, we have to make sacrifices. And these sacrifices might be really hard, but I promise they are worth it. You are worth it. I love you. Namaste. Perfect. Awesome.